show you, wanna let you loose inside my brain to see if you'd run or stay. Dangerous waiting for you. Dangerous waiting for you, my love. Dangerous waiting for you. Dangerous waiting for you, my love.
Good evening and welcome to the studio this evening. And I'm going to start with doing the chainmail bracelet rather than trying to do that at the end, because I would like to try and get it done. I've just realised I've got a ring missing from my own bracelet. I wonder where that went. I might fix that in a moment. I was just looking at it and I thought that looks odd. Either it's broken or I omitted to put it in the first place, which is a bit weird. Anyway, and then once the chainmail bracelet is done, I shall move on to the 3D printer and do the Z-axis alignment and then the Y carriage. So I'm just drinking this first, which is a beef drink. I like beef drinks. I actually like a beef drink with pepper in it, but this one doesn't have it still. I'm just going to finish it off because this is nice and I don't want to waste it. It's not so nice when it's cold. But I did spend some little bit of time today trying to remember how to do these, this full Persian. Because I know I can do it speed weaving it, because I've done a stretchy version of it, and the stretchy version of it uses neoprene rings, and you can't open those. They are permanently closed. So I know I've done it. It's just a case of remembering it, or in this case, cheating and finding a photograph that helped me work out what I was supposed to do. So now that I'm on track for that, I shall carry on with that in just a moment. Beef drink, I love those. I'm out of space, put that over there. And then a cup of tea. Right, so whilst I'm looking at this, I'm going to fix my bracelet first. So on here, where's my pricker? There it is. I've got one ring missing here. So whilst I'm thinking about it, I'm going to borrow one of these and add it in, or try and add it in. This can be difficult to do in the middle of a chain like this. But we will succeed. I know we'll succeed, but it might take a bit of fiddling. Or in this particular case, it might go in at first time. Come on. You're coming through the centre of that. Sometimes it's just a matter of something as simple in this particular case as having the ring open enough. Now these are probably smaller pliers. Okay, let's bend that in a little bit. There's not a lot of space for this. There we go. Fixed. And seamless again. And that was useful, spotting that. So now then, I'm going to see if I can just move this camera back a little bit. Give myself a little bit more space. Now then, the question is, am I out of focus now? The answer is probably going to be yes, isn't it? You're going to be out of focus. You're going to be... Trying to get a decent view. I suppose what I should have done at this point is... That's not too bad to work under the camera. Next time I do this, maybe one of the things I'll do is put the camera a bit higher and zoom in. That's probably a good idea. So now what I want something to do is just to... I just need to focus the camera. So, about that position there. So if I just put those on there, like that, I can then focus the camera. Which surprisingly looks to be in focus, but... Okay, we'll see how that goes. So if you're watching this and it looks a little out of focus when you're watching it, let me know. So I've got a little stub chain here, and I know it's critical I get the rings in the right position before I start, so that's there. And this is one where there's a trade-off in holding this thing and holding the rings. But this ring then goes that side. Yep, that side. And then I've got to go between that ring's escaped. I've got to go in there. Once I've sort of worked the pattern a few times, it becomes easier to remember. I have got the right rings, haven't I? Yes. Just feels a bit tight, that's all. Okay, so that goes in there. It's a relatively small space I've got to get it through. There is a technique to this. I know there's a technique to it, I just can't remember what it is. I will probably relearn it as I go. So I now put 2 rings on here, and I put 2 rings on here, like that. I know there's enough space to align them. It is in focus. I know there's enough space to put them in the right position afterwards, so I'm not fantastically bothered about where they are. And I now put another ring through exactly the same path, and this one sometimes gets a little bit irritating to put through. Yep, and then it goes through that ring and this ring here. I think I'm going to end up using the two, swap those pliers for these ones because these got a slightly sharper nose. And now I need this ring to go down the side there like that. And then my next one does exactly the same thing again. Nice thing actually about speed weaving this, rather than weaving it with standard rings or just open rings, is that I'm doing kind of doing exactly the same thing each time. I don't have to sort of twist and work out where I want things to go. Come on, I want that ring. Why is that proving a little bit awkward? I don't know. Something's not right there. So let me take that out because something's not right. For some reason they wouldn't sit together like that. This one was sitting higher. So I'd obviously done something wrong, but I don't know what. Because they are actually in those two rings are actually woven correctly. This is the frustrating bit. When you're trying to, I've got a feeling actually, if I remember rightly, these are better open the other way, but that's too late now. There is you tend to always open rings in the same way, and from memory now, looking at the bit of a struggle I'm having with this, I know there's one weave where it's better to open the rings the opposite way to the way you normally do them, and at this moment in time I'm guessing this is the weave that I do that for. That's through. Okay, just because of the way you're trying to the way the sort of the ring itself gets in its own way. So 2 rings to go on there. Grab that and close up, and then do the same thing again. Yeah, this one is better, probably open the other way. I shall try and remember that for the next time. When this chain gets a bit longer as well, it's going to be a bit easier to hold. So let's try and do it from the top. There we go. And this time I don't put 2 rings on, as I was just about to try and do, because I've already got 2 rings on there, and I've just accidentally closed this one, and I'm not sure where the closure is. So So either I've done a perfect close or it's slipped around. So what I'm doing here is just, there it is, just spinning the ring around, feeling for where the closure was. It wasn't quite closed properly. There we go. And then one ring goes that side and one ring goes this side, like that, to form that chevron look. And then I do it again. Through there, through there, through there. I'm getting the hang of it. And I can't pick two rings up at once, they'll go all over the table if I try that. I think I'm going to redesign that layout on screen, and then just have, that's a closed ring, just have the so the camera being full screen as it is at the moment. Have it just in the space. What am I doing here? Putting that through there, like that, yeah, and then through those two, like that, and closing it. Because I have a tendency, as you're seeing, to wander off screen. And get hidden under the right hand bar. And come along. Thank you. Could I get the rings in the right position for the next block? Otherwise I'll get the wrong pattern. So this first one isn't too bad. Yeah, unfortunately with chainmail you kind of want to be looking quite close at it to actually see what's going on. Which means I'm working quite close to the cameras. If I zoomed in, whilst I wouldn't be working close to the cameras, I'd still be in a fairly restricted space because the field of view goes down as you zoom in. So that's one. Now do it again. Yeah, so it's kind of a difficult choice to just exactly how to photograph what I'm doing here, to let you see what I'm doing but make it possible to actually do it so close to the camera. Oh bother, I need that ring on there, otherwise it will be wrong. There we go. There we go, that's it, getting the hang of it. Of course at this point, that's, having said that, that's when Murphy walks in the door and something goes wrong. But we'll, like that. I'm going to be dropping rings left, right and centre, I know. It's usually what happens when I say it's going well. No, you got on, ring. Stop trying to escape, you're not going to. No matter what you do, you are going to be ending up on that ring. So I'd stop trying to wriggle and actually get there. And that's it. See, I told you were going to go on. Talk to your rings when you're doing this. It helps enormously. They don't understand you, but it makes you feel better. Of course, if at any time the rings answer you back, it's time to give up and go to bed. That wants to be through the middle of that. It's very easy to misthread a ring, so you've got to keep an eye on it. Like then, twice I've just misthread it through different parts of the weave. Right, we'll shortly be able to get rid of this handle I've got on the end, which will be good because although it's great for holding when you first start the block, it starts messing with, as you move it around, you start knocking the rings around on the table, and that then starts to get really irritating. So probably another 2 or 3, and then I'll take that wire off because I won't need it. So there we go, and add, still on screw, yes I am, 1, 2 rings. Ready, they're trying to get away. People do this in sort of different ways. Some people will put the rings on each, try and get the rings on each side. Some people will just do what I'm doing here, which is not really care until you've got them this second ring in place, and then just push them into place then. I tend not to do it this way, tending not to care about where they go until afterwards, just because they move around as I sort of manipulate the rings, or I try and just sort of move the chain a little bit. They switch positions, and then you still have to put them back, so I start with them closed in the first place. What am I doing here? At this point I've just forgotten what I'm doing. That's those 2 through there. What I need to do is go through that space there. Okay. Despite the fact I'm doing the same thing each time, for the moment then I did literally forget what I was doing, or what I was doing. Not what I was doing, I knew I was trying to do the chainmail, but just what wanted to go where is what I forgot. Okay. And I started to relearn the technique I'd developed to get these rings in place. There we go. As you see, as I'm doing, it's starting to get easier for me, which basically means I start getting quicker. It's not the quickest of weaves to build, isn't this one? The half Persian 3-in-1 is one of the quicker ones. I suppose things like the just simple chain is probably just it's probably as quick or quicker as well, but they that always sort of I don't know, there seems to be a difference when I'm doing it. and this is trying my patience again. Sometimes when you're doing this, for some, probably just your mood or whatever it is in the day, when you're doing it sometimes it just seems to be conspiring against you to make it awkward, and that's when you can sort of feel your irritation levels going up. And I know last night when after I'd done the 3D printer bit and I came to do this, the very first ring just said to me, that's it. I knew it was going to get worse, so I gave up at that point. Right, a cup of tea. I don't want that to go cold, so I'll continue to drink it. Let's get rid of this off the end. Now what I'm doing at this point though is kind of committing to the fact that I'm going to finish this bracelet, because trying to remember which is the right end will probably take me quite a long time next time I start doing it if I leave it. So anybody who's watching, this is ring weaving, also known as chain mail, and don't actually, well, chain mail certainly these days is not armour. It's a technique of weaving rings together. Whether or not the technique took its name from the armour in the first place and then they sort of got split apart, I don't know. Because you do have chainmail armour, but that's or probably more correctly described as things like a chainmail chest plate or something like that. Because then it describes what it is and the technique used to make it. Although when they're doing those, they used to be made out of iron, I think it was, and they used to be riveted, did the rings. These aren't, these are just bent into position, as you can see me doing. Now these are made out of aluminium. They have then been anodised, which is what gives them the particular colour. And in this particular case that colour is silver. Aluminium itself is silverish, but if you leave it, it will tarnish and go a grey white colour. These don't tarnish because they've been anodised. Anodising is basically using putting dye onto the surface or into the surface of the metal. Uses an acid to etch the surface, and the dye then sits within the what is essentially the oxidization on the surface. Right, I want another ring through there before I forget, which is probably what I've done before. Get it through the right way. And they come in all sorts of colours to rings. I buy mine, but if you anodise your own, you can have any sorts of colours you like. I buy mine, they're available in 17 colours now, I believe. Was it 16? Can't quite remember. It's either 16 or 17. Different colours, most of the rainbow, and I can't actually remember. I could get out a box if anybody wants to see a colour range. Let me know. I've got a box with them all in, or I've got a box with all but one in, because rose is a new colour. and that's not in my box at the moment. That was a colour that was added by popular demand, shall we say. Now then, that doesn't feel right. It is right, but it doesn't feel it. No, it's not. It's not right. I'm going through the wrong side of that ring. That's why it's there. So easy to put the rings through and get them misthread them, as I had done there. You can also do chainmail with all sorts of other things. You get things called get rings called bright aluminium. That's normal aluminium which has been tumbled in a polishing agent, and I have no idea whether they will tarnish or not, because I've never used it, to be honest. But there's also titanium available, and anodised titanium, and titanium is quite a strong metal. I was doing a bracelet with that on stream on Friday night. Yeah, because it's Sunday now. Wow, doesn't time go quickly? Yeah, so if you looked back at the VODs, then I was doing titanium on not the last stream but the one before that, and it's actually quite it's an easy ring to work, or an easy metal to work, but it's actually quite hard. To simply close a ring is quite difficult to do. To weave it and to close it while you're weaving it isn't too bad. I don't know quite why there's a difference between the two, but there is. And it actually takes about twice as long to weave in total a titanium bracelet of an aluminium one. Now there's another one of those metals like that that's available, and I can't for the life of me remember what it is. I have used it once, but I can't remember. The aluminium is a lot more of a popular colour just because it's shiny. And titanium isn't, even though it is actually a stronger bracelet. But you can also get stainless steel. Stainless steel, well, I was going to say titanium, by the way, doesn't come up shiny when it's anodised. It has a look of dusky or dusty look. It's a matte colour, but it really looks like it's dusty, but it's not. That's about the best way I can describe it. In actual fact, you will see one come up here on the right hand side of the screen at some point. There is a titanium bracelet in the rotation there. The other one that I'm working with at the moment is stainless steel, which is a grey metal. Again, it's a matte surface. That one does not look dusty. It just looks matte. It's a sort of silver grey colour. It's over here somewhere. I've got a bracelet half finished. If I can find it, there it is. So this is titanium. You can see the difference in colour. between them. It's matte but sort of a shine. It does reflect. This is looking very slightly bronzy colour, so it's not exactly grey. It's tending towards the brown. I don't know if that's just as it's been sat here, but it's quite nice. It's heavier. It's a lot heavier than the aluminium. So you know, it's if you like heavy jewellery, then stainless steel is a good one to go for, if you like the colour, that is. And you can, with all of these, stainless steel, aluminium, titanium, or even the other one that I will have to look up after the stream to remind myself, basically you can do any of the weaves in any of the colours and any of the metals. So if you wanted, for example, a full Persian in stainless steel, you can have a full Persian in stainless steel. Now there are limitations as to what you can have, though. The weave itself dictates it, actually, or the ring size that you're using for the weave dictates it. There is, for example, this weave that I'm doing here doesn't work if I try and use what would be the next size down in rings, but sort of a slightly smaller ring. And generally speaking, the slightly smaller ring has a larger wire diameter, and this doesn't really work because you're trying to get rings interwoven like this, and the size of the ring and the thickness of the ring determine how much space there is in there to weave. And if there isn't enough space, one of two things happens. Either you physically can't weave it, you physically can't get the ring through, or it's so tight that this, instead of being a chain that moves like this does, it becomes a rod that doesn't move. Now that sometimes is useful, you know, for making sculptural pieces, chainmail. You actually, you know, you purposely pick ring sizes that are sort of, shall we say, I'll say slightly too small, but within a certain range. And indeed, when they're talking about, or when you start learning weaves, one of the things you may learn fairly quickly is it's not the size of the rings that matter, and it's not the diameter of the wire that the rings are made out of that matters. It's the combination of the two. So there are weaves where you can have a ring size and thickness where it doesn't work, and you can get just a thinner ring of the same diameter and it does, or you can go to a larger ring of the original diameter and it works. So all the weaves are, whether they work or not is how on earth did I manage to do that? Oh, there we go. They appeared to have been crossed then, but they weren't. The rings, well, there's three measurements to a ring, and kind of the last one's kind of the important one. But you've got the ring diameter itself. You know, I think these might be 5mm. I'm not sure off the top of my head. Although I'm very likely to. They also tend to be measured in imperial sizes as well. What are these? Yeah, 3/16. 3/16 of an inch. So yes, imperial measurement, but I think that's about 5mm. It might be 4, I'm not sure. That is a closed ring, yes. And then there's the wire diameter. Now that is measured either, well, that's measured in one of 3 different ways, just to confuse matters. It's sometimes measured in gauge, but there's 2 gauges. There's a American wire gauge, AWG, and standard wire gauge, SWG, and you sometimes see them both. See rings from, if you were going out and buying them, from different suppliers, which will, both say 19 gauge, but one's thicker than the other because one's in American wire gauge and one's in standard wire gauge. So you've got to be careful when you buy these things. And sometimes they are measured in millimeters. So, but generally speaking, when that happens, they've also got their diameter in millimeters as well. And then the last measurement, which tends to be the important one, is something called aspect ratio, and that is fairly simply the wire diameter. It's the ring diameter divided by the wire diameter. Yeah, that way around, because I've missed that ring off there. I've got to open this one again. So if you've got a 5mm ring on 1mm wire, then the aspect ratio 5 divided by 1 is 5. And to be honest, doing the aspect ratio calculation is a lot easier in metric than it is when you've got the rings measured in wire gauges. Now, this is close so well, I have to use my fingernail to find the end of it. I've got to open it because this ring didn't go over. I didn't get to open it a bit more. Didn't get woven in when it should have been. There we go. So close it up again. Yes, so aspect ratio, and when you look at weaves as to whether a weave will work with a particular your desired ring, what you're doing is you are looking at whether the aspect ratio for the weave is compatible with your ring. Weaves generally have a range of aspect ratios that they will work with. So when you're looking at them and you're looking at references on them, you might see, for example, it'll say the ideal aspect ratio is 4.5, but it works from 3.5 to 6. As you get lower, it'll get stiffer. As you get higher, it'll get looser. I think that's the right way around. But one extreme is stiffer, one extreme is looser. And then you get the one in the middle, which is ideal, and you can use any ring size or aspect ratio within that. And so this might be aspect ratio 4, and I'm just making this up because I don't know what it is. But then that could be an 8mm ring with 2mm diameter wire, or it could be a 16mm ring with a 4mm diameter wire. Both of them would provide exactly the same sort of stiffness of chain. It's an amazing thing in a way that works like that. But it does allow you then to sort of pick and choose your rings. If you want something sort of nice and chunky, if you like, you can pick larger rings, reasonably confident that the weave is going to work because of the aspect ratio. Okay, so this is growing quite nicely. Now that I've got the hang of it, which always helps. Been doing a lot of half Persians just recently. Full Persians is not as common. Ah dear. And there I was, you see, getting cocky in a way, because I've just forgotten to put the 2 rings on this, having put this through. There we go. I'm going to find the end now. Open it and slot 2 rings onto it. 1, 2, and then close it up. You find this whenever you're working with that's crossed. I don't want that to cross over, and they've got to lie alongside each other as these 2 rings I'm feeding through here. That's it. Is that it? Nope, it's not. It's crossed. They've got to you've got to be careful not to actually sort of go, as I was doing there, underneath this ring that's here, this one here. I need to go on top of it and come out on top of it at that side. I can't go on the bottom and come out on the top, or vice versa. That's a completely different weave. And it's as I mentioned before, it's easy enough to do. There's you develop little techniques for yourself as you do this that make weaving things easier, like just exactly how to hold the chain, so and how to put the rings through. So you sort of see me position these, and I now sort of remember that I come in almost from top down like this, and therefore I find it relatively easy to put and that's relatively easy, he says, having done it wrong, but by coming in top down I find it easier to get these rings to go through the space I want them to go through. Other people find it easier to do it in a different way. I believe on this weave it's common, I think it's this weave, it's common to have people open rings in the opposite direction to normal. Because it makes it easier for them to put the rings through. But things like starting the half Persians. Half Persian is a weave that a lot of people have a lot of problems starting, and I used to have a lot of problems starting it as well. But what I've now been able to do is find a technique that works for me, where I can start it very easily and it works every time, and I don't have any problems starting the weave. And it used to be a weave that would take me something like 20-30 minutes to get the first half dozen rings woven, because the weave, you've got to hold the rings in a particular position, and if you don't, when I pick up the 2 pliers like this, the rings tend to go where the rings want to go, and if the pattern breaks apart you've got to start realign it before you put the next ring through, and that can sometimes take about 30 minutes or even longer. I have struggled for ages in the past trying to get the first few rings. It's about 15-16 rings before the pattern becomes self-supporting. So just give me a second. This pattern here is self-supporting in that these rings, this is not collapsing into just a pile of rings, and indeed at this end it isn't. at the start of this it's self-supporting. The rings still don't collapse into a pile, and you can just, you can fairly easily start the weave off. The half Persians collapse, but I have, as I say, found a technique for doing that myself, and it's one that I'm sure other people have found, or they've found ways around it for themselves. I have seen people who start the weave laying the rings out on the desk and not moving them, basically. They'll sort of weave it, keeping the chain on the desk, and then when they've got enough rings in, go back and sort of tidy everything up a bit. If that works for them, it works for them. It doesn't work for me. I can't do that. I always find I end up picking up the chain and it collapsing on me. I did try it that way. I've done it again. And what I've done again is forgotten to put the 2 rings on. I do that from time to time. I do it most while I'm streaming, because in talking and saying what I'm doing and whatever, I just forget to put the 2 rings on. Your brain sort of skips the beat somewhere along the row. Right, now I can put this one through. I'm going to find the right place to do it. So again, coming down from the top. In doing this, I don't know if you can see the way the ring is, it means this bit's on the bottom, and I can sort of manoeuvre it without the top bit getting in the way quite so much. And then make sure that goes through the 2 rings there. And position these 2 off the side like cheeks. So if I was trying to sort of do this sort of in this sort of fashion, or coming from this side, for example, here, this bit gets in the way. So you learn your own techniques, your own ways of doing things. It's like what I'm doing here is it on top of techniques on techniques, but this is a technique called speed weaving. It's called speed weaving because I've first of all already opened the rings that I'm using, and I've closed these so they're sort of half prepared. And by working with rings, it's easier to close rings when they're not on the weave. When you're just handling one ring at a time, and so it's accepted, if you like, that's a quicker way of closing them. And opening rings is off the weave is well, they have to be opened off the weave. So when you can work with rings you've opened and rings that are already closed off the weave progresses faster, hence the speed designation, speed weaving. I keep drifting off camera. If I drift off camera, let me know. It's effectively only a few inches across from here. As you can see, you can just about see my pliers. They're about 6 inches, and they fill the frame, so I don't have to move very far before I'm off frame. And I could have sworn this chain is going to take about 140 rings, and that's what's on the desk in front. Well, that's what was on the desk in front of me. I am looking at this at the moment though, and I'm thinking there isn't enough rings here. So 140 rings should be enough to make an 8.5 inch long bracelet. I know that from the fact that this one that I wear is 8.5 inches long, and it took 140 rings. So I measured empirically, not quite sure which one of those it is. In theory, you can sit down and calculate how long the chain is going to be, or how many rings you need for a particular length of chain, because of course it's as long as you can. It's as long as when you pull the rings. So knowing how they're positioned, you should be able to calculate it. But you can see that they're diagonal and they overlap each other, and so they overlap each other. So a particular ring, instead of it, internal diameter might be 3 millimeters. So instead of it being 3 millimeters between rings, it's probably only 1 millimeter because it's overlapping at each side. And you sort of do that sort of calculation. I'd have to sit down and work out what it was that I wanted, what the shape meant in terms of the sizes. But to be honest, I wouldn't bother. I'd just get some rings out and make it and keep measuring it until it was the size I wanted. Don't actually know anybody that would go to the extent of actually calculating how long it was going to be. If they wanted a particular length, they'd just keep adding rings until it was that size. There we go. Eddie Fall Guy, good evening. Welcome to the studio this evening. How are you, sir? I am, well, fairly obviously I'm doing a full Persian. Which was, I won't say it's a disastrous start last night, but I did give up because I was tired and I was doing it late, but I couldn't for the life of me remember how to speed weave it, and it was frustrating me to the point where I said, oh sod this, I'm not going to do it, I'm going to give up. Because it was irritating me, because I knew you can speed weave it, because I've done it with neoprene rings. I made a stretchy version. For anybody wondering why that guarantees it can be speed weaved, is neoprene rings. They're not rubber, but you might consider them to be rubber rings. You can't open them, they are closed permanently, which is like this. And to incorporate those in a bracelet, you have to be able to speed weave it, because speed weaving involves using closed rings. Been up to anything interesting today, Eddie? Or has it just been spending time with the children? Not that that isn't necessarily interesting for you, but I'm sure it probably is, but you know what I mean. Time away. 20 past 8. Oh, okay, it's about 40. Yeah, about 40 minutes. I'm out of practice. This should be almost finished by now normally. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Ah dear. That looks okay, yeah, it does. No, that doesn't. I have a ring out of place. That one is out of place. Or that one's out of place, whichever way you want to look at it, one or the other. I'm going to realign this one because it's further out in the weave, it'll be a bit looser. So what I do now is find the end of it and open it. There's the end. This hasn't got a lot of space here. There we go. What's that? Right, okay. Let's take that ring out altogether, because what I've done is I've damaged it. You might have seen the pliers slipping on it, and I've actually damaged the end. So now this is the fun bit, getting this back in where it came out. And if this takes me too long, what I'm going to do is just take the weave apart, because it's not that far in. Now this is where I usually end up with my tongue hanging out of my mouth at the right angle, just to make this work. That's going to go through the centre of there. And I was about to say I'm almost close to just taking this apart. Come on up, come on through, come on ring, you can do it. There's enough space for you. There you go, you see, I told you you could do it. Right, now then, this is where it gets awkward, trying to hold. Let me put this down on the desk. I've got very little space here to actually hold these. Could almost do with some micro nose pliers. Now at this point I am concentrating solely 100% on these rings. So if anybody's saying anything in chat, I'm afraid I'm not watching it at the moment. And if this does not go soon, I am going to take it apart. Come along. With some weaves you've got more space to do this. Now I'm going to take it apart. The other thing that makes it frustrating is it's a bit warm in here. And that makes it oh, you're trying to do some of your good luck with that, some of your graphics. So let's take this apart. I can carry on trying to get it into place and get really frustrated, or I can simply rebuild it. So when you close these rings, if you close them well enough, you can't actually even see where the closure is, and you've got to basically feel for it. Now then, is this the one or is it the next one? Okay, let's take this apart. I think it's the next block where the error is. Pretzel, have you gone to sleep? Suppose me mentioned it was a little warm in here. Yeah. Maybe Pretzel's just quiet. Shall see if it comes on again in a moment. Ah, that's the one. Okay. That's the ring that was that I've just replaced. So what I can do now is just reweave these others back in. I've only done this one, opened it once, so reusing the rings isn't too much of a problem, but if I'd done this 2 or 3 times, I'd be swapping these rings out for new ones. Because the metal becomes work hardened and then it gets brittle and will snap very easily. Right, not forgetting to put these 2 on. Right, then with a bit of luck, if I can get through this fairly quickly, which is already taking longer than I was expecting, I can go back to working on the 3D printer. Got the Z axis, that's the vertical axis, to align. Make sure that they are perfectly vertical. And then once they're aligned, we can move on to building the Y-axis carriage. The Y-axis is front to back. On this particular printer, the axes are all kind of independent. The bed moves forward and backwards. The heads move up and down and left to, and the X-axis is on the Z-axis carriage. On a lot of other printers, the bed moves up and down, and the head moves left and right, forward and back on the X and Y carriage. This one kind of does it a slightly different way. I don't think either is a particularly better or not better way, but it does tend to be standard these days that I was about to say that I'm trying to think what the Pusher one does. I don't know. I will stop talking at that point because I don't know what you see quite a lot where the bed move up and down, like the printer bot and things like that. But I'm quite interested in the Delta printers. Well, they're quite cool to watch the way they move around and don't work with an XY positioning, but I'm interested in them mainly because you get tall build volumes with them. they can get quite tall objects. And since I was interested in vases and things like that, printing vases, printing something that can go sort of 12 inches or more up is quite useful, or would be quite useful if I had one. But I shall see if I use this one sufficiently enough, then I might consider getting another one. Fear Reaper, good evening. Hey, hello and welcome. Haven't seen you in a long time. How are you doing, sir? What have you been up to in the long time I haven't been seeing you? Which of course is totally on my part, because I haven't been broadcasting very much. Nakmui hello as well. Welcome and good evening. I'm doing a little bit of this chainmail until I need to get this one completed for an order. I like to get them done as soon as I can. Oh, come along, rings. Cooperate, because you're gonna go in whether you like it or not. I'm just waiting for them. I know it's time to stop when I'm talking to the rings. They answer me back. And this one is pretending it's going to be awkward. Well, it's not pretending to be awkward, it is actually being awkward. But I beat it. There we go. You're doing very well. So am I, thank you very much. I mean, okay, it's Monday morning tomorrow and I'm back at work, but well, that's fine. Since I work from almost the same place as I stream, it's convenient. I don't mind going to work. Plus, I quite like what I do anyway. Oh dear. I knew Murphy had to come into it somewhere. When it starts going, everything starts going well. Murphy arrives and starts making things go the opposite. Yeah. I do wish sometimes Murphy would take a long holiday. You graduated, well done. You got a nice job and a nice car. Oh, that's great, that's fantastic. Are those two sort of consequential, as in your job comes with the car, or you've been able to get a nice car because you've got a job? So it's going fairly well. That's good. Saving up money for a house. Yeah, those do cost a fair bit, I'm afraid. There's no getting away from that one. They're still, as far as I'm aware, still considered a good investment, but it takes a long time to get the money to invest. Nice car because you got a job. Oh, okay, yeah. Well, some jobs come with cars, so. Yeah, I, for example, had a job selling things at one point, and that came with a car. Which was a good job, since I was driving driving several 1,000 miles a week. Which I'm not doing these days, so I don't really miss it. I don't mind driving. I didn't quite like driving, but I don't miss driving. As you know, I reside in Yorkshire, and my nearest customer was in Birmingham. And I had another one in Portsmouth. Which, for those of you in the UK who are not in the UK, okay, Birmingham is about, I actually don't know, it's probably about 200 miles. And it's about 3 hours driving. And Portsmouth is about 5 hours driving. Depending on where you start from, of course. Portsmouth being on the south coast. And Yorkshire's roughly in the middle of the UK landmass. You only work in the office, so they won't give you a car. Well, that's, yeah, it's alright. Sales can be quite a stressful job, depending on how you look at it, and usually your pay is highly dependent upon what you're able to sell. So working in an office does have its advantages. You know what you're going to get paid, and it's not that variable. I'm going to measure this thing in a minute, because as I said, I expect with this number of rings for it to be about 8.5 inches. And it don't look 8.5 inches to me. So either I've miscounted, or I don't know. And at this rate, this might be the complete sum total of what I'm doing on the stream tonight. Which is unfortunate, but only a 15 to 20 minute drive service. That's not too bad. If the office I used to work at most recently, that would take 25 minutes to drive to, except at rush hour, at which point it would take an hour and 10 minutes to drive to, and it was actually quicker to take the bus, which was an hour. So that's not too bad. If you've got a car parking space there, even all the better. It's been a long time since I've had a car parking space where I work, but that used to be really convenient to have a car parking space. You might send them in the future. Oh, well, that's not bad. You're progressing quite well then. What does the I was going to say, what does the company do? Because I was kind of assuming you probably didn't want to tell me what you do, but feel free to tell me what you do if you want. Might threaten them in the future. Well, I tell you what, it never usually works to threaten a company. Where I work, people have tried that. They've gone, for example, they've gone, pay me more or I'm going to leave. To which the traditional answer is, please close the door on your way out. The usual negotiating technique that works is, look at all these nice things I've done for you. Wouldn't it be really good if you paid me some more money? Then I'd be able to do some more. That's twisted. Has that come through? No, that's twisted. That's no good. That ring's crossed. And crossing it is a completely different weave, and I don't want to do that one. You must have only my brain is going. You must have only graduated in the past year, isn't it? So if you've already sort of got a fairly decent position and moving up, then you're not doing bad. So what's this 140 rings done this time? I wonder if I made it with a bigger... Oh, actually that's 7 inches. Well, almost 7 inches. Would that be a 7.5 inch bracelet? Maybe I wrote down the wrong size, because that's almost perfect. Well, it's not quite perfect, but it's close to 7.5 inches. I'll have a cup of tea first. But it needs to be half as long again. Okay, so software developing company, you're learning a very old programming technology. Oh, so you're learning Ada then. Only 2 people next to you currently. Oh, that's not bad. Well, it can be good sometimes to have those old skills. I'm trying to think now. I'm trying to think what some of the older languages that I used to know, or at least was, I wouldn't say I was fluent in, but I could read and patch if necessary. And there's things like Pascal, Fortran 77. I could manage in, I think, if I remember rightly. PL something or other. It's another one, I can't actually even remember what that was. Yeah, because I can remember that one because I was debugging. The fellow who'd actually written the program was fluent in it, and he couldn't find a bug, so I was debugging his code, never having done it before then, and I found it straight away. Not knowing anything about the language, but that was pure coincidence. Then I learnt a bit more about it. But progress 4GL 5. Oh, you did you got like a sponsored thing. Ah, okay. You probably told me all this a long time ago, Fear Reaper, so please excuse me for forgetting. There's been a fair bit gone on around here, and also I'm just forgetful. I do wish rings wouldn't join themselves together like this. Progress 4GL. I've not done anything with it, and I have heard of the language, but I must admit I can't bring anything about it to memory. Not that I can bring anything about any of the others like Fortran, etc. Most of what I end up doing these days is Visual Basic. Just because everybody wants things like Excel macros and access databases and things like that. So but I used to do a fair bit of C, not Visual C, but C, like C++ for Windows programming. And I played a bit with Java these days. quite want to have a play about with C#, but I can't actually find anything that I want to do with it at the moment. I find for me learning a language, or at least playing with a language, is better when I've got something I actually want to do with it. Not your favourite cup of tea? To some extent these days a lot of the languages are all kind of very much the same, to be honest. I mean, the hardest thing these days seems to be for most people, seems to be learning event-driven languages, and whether that's Visual Basic or whether it's C or anything like that, you know, you still got to get that event paradigm sorted in your mind. If you can do that, then usually it's just a case of working out the libraries. There's not a lot of difference in syntax. The bit I find annoying when I'm doing Visual Basic is classes don't have inheritance, which is really irritating. The nearest you can get is interfaces, but that's sort of poor man's inheritance in a way, and that's really irritating when you don't have inheritance. Because I kind of now think inheritance such a lot that it's a bigger fan of Java. Yeah, I like Java. Java libraries. I'm doing a lot of JavaScript at the moment as well. Fan of Java. C#. C# is one I haven't played with. Web technologies. TypeScript is not. That's something that's new to me. Don't know TypeScript. HTML5. I did a lot with HTML4. And CSS2, so it's CSS3 now, isn't it, I think. So I played about a lot with that. I also did it's a while now, but I did a lot with what was it? I'm trying to remember now. It's probably VB script, I think. But I do. I'm now sort of running Unix boxes rather than Windows boxes. So SQL databases, and that's fun because having done SQL Server for a good few years, I'm now using Oracle. Which is the same but not quite. Especially its sequel. Its sequel is the same but not quite. The bit I haven't worked out yet with C# is not C# itself, because it's near enough like C or C++ to sort of, you know, run with the language. But it's using the unmanaged libraries, like the C libraries, with C#, because you've got to wrap them, and I haven't worked out how to do that yet. That's got me. Should TypeScript object oriented on top of Java? Well, okay. Yeah. Oh, on top of JavaScript. I was thinking then Java is object orientated, but of course you said JavaScript. Yeah. Don't know, I'll have to have a look. It would be something I'd be doing for fun though, rather I can't actually use it at work. They don't let us have don't always let us have the nice tools like that. I've got a fairly limited environment that I can do things in, which is why I quite often end up writing things in Visual Basic when just hosting them in something like Excel, just because That's what they're letting us use in a particular environment. Coming out of there, I want these two rings to come out of here, and the static electricity is keeping them where they are. I'm almost out of rings here. I wonder if I've got any more in that box over there, because this may well be the end of it shortly. So that's a ring that's... Is that the damaged one? Yeah, that's the damaged one. Let me throw that away before I forget and use it. So we've got two open. We've got two closed, so that's convenient. So let's split these in half. One. Then I'll open and close these, and then we'll weave them and see if I need any more, which is probably the case, and then I'll have a look and see if I've got any in my box over to one side. Of course, I'm doing this the slow way, but you're currently stuck with progress. Do the... Yeah. Progress, of course, Progress 4GL. I was just thinking that sounds like what they used to call the 4GL language. The clue's in the name, isn't it? And I've got a spare one, which I'll just put to one side. So let's open these, because that's a nice fast one to do. So I'm using a ring opening ring. Yeah. Saves having to clasp it with two pliers, and it's a bit quicker than doing it with two pairs of flat pliers. I don't. None of my jobs has been as a programmer, so I'm actually not able to advise you, to be honest, on that, because the programming has been sort of an add-on to the job that I've been doing. I've wanted, I've needed a tool, or I've needed something, or there's been something that I've been doing which would be easier to do with a like a screen scraper, screen scraper or something like that. And so I've written programs to help me do my job, more than actually being a programmer as such. I was a programmer about probably in the order of about 30 years ago, when I was writing programs for VAX, microVAX visual programs. That's sort of when Windows was still sort of Windows 1 and Windows 2. So I can't actually advise you. When I've sort of been working with programmers, or with people who have been interviewing programmers, the range of what you've done, it tends to be more important. Yes, they have a need for a particular language, and usually, if they want a Visual C programmer, they're not going to get a Java programmer unless they can't find a Visual C programmer. Why am I doing that? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28. Oh, that was convenient. I thought I was busy opening the rings I meant to close. Yeah, it tends to be sort of experience more than languages as such. They want a particular language. Well, that's, if you haven't got it, it's kind of too bad, is the position to some extent. But it would be good, whatever you do, to keep a record for yourself of what you're doing in terms of techniques, for example. You know, real-time programming as a technique, for example, is, if you're aware of the concerns and things, you can sort of real-time program in a lot of different languages, as long as you understand the issues that you're trying to achieve, for example. So, you know, being able to, if you do have an interview, explain what you've done in terms of what you've learned, what you're able to do. Because unless they're after somebody who can sort of immediately jump in and start writing, you know, C#, for example, they're much more interesting people who can think their way through problems, apply experience, and doing that can make you an effective programmer, even if it's a new language to you. Because you know where the pitfalls are. You know what an integer is, as opposed to a long, and what the limitations of that are. And I'm being a little silly on purpose there, but you know, if you've done object-oriented programming, knowing what an object is, knowing or being able to construct objects, and it's something I'm bad at actually, is objects. I can never decide what should or shouldn't be an object. It's and that's one of the interesting things. Sometimes it's obvious what just going on then about object orientated or object programming. Sometimes it's obvious what should be an object. A ring should be an object, and a collection of rings is an object, and therefore a bracelet is an object comprising of a collection of rings comprising rings. I can, rings. I can do that, but then, and when you're relating to physical world, I suppose that becomes a bit easier. Pliers are an object, and there's different types of pliers. So you've got a base class. I can work my way through that, but when it gets a little bit more abstract, then I start going, I'm not sure about this, and I usually end up refactoring my code a few times, or rebuilding it. I'll build it one way and go, you know what, that should be a different object, and I'll start again. And we're coming up to 9 o'clock. So something that should take me about an hour is going to take me about 2. Oh well. I need more practice. Maybe some more jewellery streams in the future. This full Persian is quite nice when it's done with multiple colours. Just because you end up with, if you do it with 2 colours, for example, you end up with like 2 chevrons one down each side, sort of like red and green, for example. And because they're sitting across, you get quite a nice sort of effect. One I keep meaning to do is to do each side a different colour as well. So I use 4 colours in it and just see what that comes out looking like. So I could see that being quite an interesting design choice, 4 colours on a full Persian. Makes it slightly more challenging to weave as well, to keep the rings in the right place. One thing I like playing with is the different colours. There we go. You can train your trouble solving skills without problem. Well, invoicing software for hospitals where yeah, I can understand regulations being really important, and it's quite complicated. Yeah, regulations usually are. That's when you need to understand what you're doing. Yeah, problem solving. Yeah. Yeah, I'm working on finance systems at the moment, and that gets interesting. I've done it in the past, working on general ledger stuff. And when you're working on general ledger stuff, everything has to add up. There's no, yeah, I was about to say there's no rounding. That's not true, because it has to be to the penny. But you've got to make sure it's sort of left and right balance exactly. There's no posting sort of a penny out or anything like that. Where's my other pliers gone? There they are. I enjoy programming. I probably wouldn't make it as a commercial programmer because of the style of my programming. I tend to describe myself more as a tactical programmer rather than a commercial programmer. And my programming style is one of small build steps. I build a step, I'll test, and then I'll build another step and test, and I iterate like that. I don't go into do a 90% functional build and then compile it and see if it works. I tend to build tiny steps, and that's not the way things are done these days, even with rapid prototyping. But unusually, actually, I heard an interesting term for the sort of thing that we do, or I do, which was citizen programmer the other day. It's quite an interesting description. You're not a commercial programmer. It's not your job, but you program anyway. Yeah, I'm quite unusual in that I don't like, but I document what I do. I actually write documentation, which is unusual in the area of the business I'm in, because there's lots of people using macros and databases and code, and not one bit of it is documented. They come to you then can you just fix this? And you have to then spend about 2 weeks analysing the thing to work out just what on earth it's doing. Never mind how it's doing it and what's wrong with it. So these days I am actually spend more time documenting things than I do writing. Yeah, well, you 1 cent short, and you well, it doesn't get past testing, but yeah, you sometimes even right back at the start, sometimes trying trying to work out where even that 1 cent has gone missing is challenging at times. Luckily, I don't have to worry about it quite so much these days. It'll look better if I don't look like I'm poking you in the eye with the pliers, won't it? Put them down while I'm not using them. Must remember to stay in camera, stay in shot. What I want is a close-up wide-angle lens, which is kind of an oxymoron. It's impossible. That's kind of diametrically opposite to each other, but it's fun to want. Actually, what would be nice would be a camera with a zoom, but with tracking, so it tracked me whilst I was doing this. So if I drifted off to one side, it would follow me. Just unwinding this ring because it's gone in wrongly. And it's crossed the one beneath it, which is not good. Just keep saying that's a different weave. You've got no time to document stuff. Yeah, I understand. But it will come back and bite you one day. It will. There is one application that I use not quite on a daily basis, but I do use it each month for about 5 days, and I wrote it from scratch, and I am still in the process of documenting it because I had time constraints. I needed to use it and do other things as well, and I've had to go back in and amend things a couple of times in there, and I do not remember how the thing works. And you might think, oh, that it's because it's written in Microsoft Access. It's written in Visual Basic for applications, and you might not actually quite, if you know anything about that, it's kind of hard to believe how that can be how it can't understand how something works. But if you were to try reading my program, you cannot find the entry point for it, because the entry point is triggered by a callback routine, which is triggered from a system tick. So I've actually got a dispatch loop in there. I've got a dispatcher in there, and the dispatcher is what's triggering all the code, and the modules register a callback, and every time I have to read it, I have to go back in and everything starts, the dispatcher starts went from an auto run, so I have to go in, read the auto run routine to remind myself just how this thing works. And I will have to fix it. I will have to fix that one of these days and actually go in and complete the documentation and write the documentation in such a way that I can actually remember how to do it next time I want to change something. Although I must admit, I'm actually quite proud of it, the way it works. It was done that way to get round, basically round the problem of Visual Basic is still even though it's event driven, it's still somewhat procedural, and the event I wanted was at the arrival of a file, and there isn't an event for the arrival of a file, and I can't keep polling all the time, so yeah. I fully understand. I fully understand. Oh dear. How much of a problem it would be, I guess, will come down to how the code's written, whether the code is self-documenting or whatever. I don't know what progress is like, but of course C is notorious for people writing really compact code, and by compact, basically compressing as many elements onto one line as they can get away with, and which makes it really obscure to read, and yet they can write code just as easily in a less obscure manner, and to make it sort of self-documenting in a way, or even putting comments in, because the compilers these days are, you don't have to help them by writing obscure compact code. You think so? They hired you to learn it, didn't they? So what happened to the bloke before him they were so dependent on? Yes, nobody is indispensable. Yeah, and I guarantee if you come back to it in a year's time, you won't remember how it worked. Company cat, yeah. Although they, depending on the company, I guess they may go so far. They'll only go so far though before they say, "Oh, okay, goodbye." Yeah, turn the lights out on your way out. Oh dear. This ring, you are going in there. You're not going to get away a third time. I don't think I'm going to be working on the Z-axis tonight. Even if I finish this before 10 o'clock, I don't think I'll be working on the Z-axis tonight. That's because I'm getting a little bit tired just because it's getting late. And it needs to be aligned properly. If I want the printer to operate smoothly. So all the alignment I'm doing at the moment is to make it run smoothly and doesn't bind and skip steps and things like that, which are completely detrimental to the use of a 3D printer. These days, the other bit of alignment I will have to do at some point when it's built is the bed alignment that makes the bed level, and that's something that the modern printers don't need these days because they have software. They actually measure how level the bed is before they start doing a print, and then they are able to calculate the offsets that they need to make in the z-axis to print on a non-level bed. Absolutely fantastic thing, which I won't be able to take advantage of. Because for one thing, you need a metal bed. Oh, well, you don't actually. Immediately pull back on my statement. A lot of beds are metal and therefore they can use a touch sensor. Some of them use things like switch sensors and things like that. But the electronics that are in this kit are 2.5 years old. So I need to buy a complete new control unit, a new electronics unit in order to be able to do that sort of thing. Yeah, true. Yeah. You just have to be subtle in pointing out to them. So that they think that they've realised that you might leave if you don't get something, as opposed to you saying that you might leave if you don't get something. That way it's their idea and they don't do the please turn out the lights. Some of the companies that I visited with selling things, they used at least there's a couple of them that had the policy that if somebody said, I think I might leave if you don't give me any more money, would actually say thank you, goodbye. At that point, they'd actually, if somebody did that sort of officially, shall we say, they'd say, okay, here's a month's notice. They had the policy of not wanting people who didn't want to be there. And somebody saying, I'll leave if you don't give me enough money, is somebody that doesn't want to be there. That was quite an interesting thing. Luckily I didn't work for them. What's the biggest chainmail I've made before? Chains, to be honest, yes sir. So necklaces, 21, 24-inch necklaces. Mostly they're things like Byzantine weave. I don't have one around here at the moment, but that's kind of the biggest things. I don't make armor stuff. So it's just jewellery. But it's kind of a bit misleading, because you can have a really long chain, something in what you might call a 2-in-1 chain, which is just like a normal chain, sort of you buy from a hardware store or something like that, or a ship's anchor, and that can be 24, 28 inches long. And yet I can do something like this. This is 8.5 inches long, and this has got more rings in it than probably a 2 foot long 2-in-1 chain. So is this bigger? Well, it's not as long, so it depends on how you want to measure it. Okay. Thank you, yes sir. Oh, that's not bad, Fear Reaper. That's not bad at all. That's a good position to be in, I guess, from your point of view, as a company that's sort of saying we would like you to work for us. Here's why. I guess programmers must be in short supply then in the Netherlands. So yes, so this is it's a bit hard to say that is yes. So this is it's a relatively simple weave. It's just a little bit complicated to weave just because you're trying to put things in, but this is sort of a fairly, I was about to say it's a fairly regular weave. It's and some of the weaves are a little bit less regular, but to some extent all weaves are just repeating the same thing time after time after time. So this is a weave that's called Full Persian. But I was just going to do, thinking about that, I was just going to show you another one. This is a more complicated one, which is called Candy Cane. And this has probably got more rings in it than the one I showed you a minute ago. And this is made out of stainless steel. But this is, there's a subtle spiral to this, as you can probably see. Actually, you can see that really nicely on the screen. There's a spiral on it because of the sparkle. Yeah, I like that. I'm watching this on my broadcast monitor. But yeah, so you know that's quite a large piece, relatively speaking, to make, and that's only what, about 8 inches long. You're off to bed. Okay, have a good evening. Well, yeah, because you're about an hour ahead, aren't you? So it is getting quite late for you. Have a great evening. Fear Reaper, thanks very much for dropping in and saying hello. It's nice to see you again. And Leazar, good evening. Welcome to the stream this evening. Nice to see you back. How are you today? I don't, despite what the title may say, I don't think we'll be getting to the 3D printing tonight, Leazar, or to the 3D printer tonight. I am woefully out of practice doing this particular weave, well, doing a few weaves actually, but this particular weave, and it's taking me a lot longer than it should do. But I ideally need to get this done tonight. That is if I don't run out of rings. So I am hoping I have some more in a box to the right hand side of me, which I shall have to go have a look at very shortly. Of course, if I don't have any more, I will be stopping in about 5 minutes doing this, and then we will have some time to do the printer. There are times, and it's not true, but there are times when it almost feels like somebody's picked the most complicated weaves that they can on purpose, just to make it awkward for you when they order something. And of course they haven't, but it's sometimes fun to think that. But of course they don't do that. They pick the weave that they actually like the look of. And I actually do enjoy making this weave. Actually, I enjoy making most of the weaves that I do, so I haven't come across one I actually dislike. I know when I first started doing them, the half Persians were not my favourite. I loved doing them when they were working, but they were not my favourite because starting a half Persian used to be challenging. Used to be one of the most frustrating parts. There's quite a few weaves, when you start them, they're quite hard to start because you have to keep the rings in a particular position in order to be able to see basically where the next one goes, or at least at my level of skill you do. And what happens with some of the weaves when you don't have too many rings in the pattern at the time is if you sort of drop it, there's not enough rings to hold the shape, and the shape basically falls apart. And it can be reconstructed, but sometimes working out just how the rings are supposed to be positioned when they've jumbled themselves up is a challenging aspect, and the half Persians are a little bit like that. Until you've got about 10 or 15 rings up, a fair number anyway, in the pattern, it will sort of jumble itself up if you drop them by accident, or well, even if you just let go of them in order to pick up a pair of pliers, and that can be really frustrating. But after you get about 10 or 15, then there's enough rings in the pattern to hold the pattern together, and then it becomes a lot simpler to carry on weaving from there on. In fact, the way a lot of people deal with that is that they keep a length of chain. They keep a length of half Persian, like an inch long, so they've got to the point where it's self-supporting, and they keep that, and then when they want to do another chain, they just add on to that until they get it to either finished length or as long as they want to be, and then they split it in two, so they keep the starting unit and just keep reusing it. Which saves them a heck of a lot of grief and frustration. Right, I've got one more unit I can do before I have to see if I've got any more of these rings. Yeah, I can put one more unit on and then I will have to have a look, because this certainly does not look to be long enough. If it isn't, I shall have to order some more rings tomorrow. And then hopefully, these being silver, there won't be any colour variations, because if there is, I'll have to start again and make it from scratch. That ring's not closed, but that one is, so let's close this ring. Because unfortunately, with them being anodised, there's a lot of, there can be variability in colours between batches. Silver's not so bad, some other colours are worse. So whenever I make a bracelet or a necklace, I always try and make sure I've got enough rings to complete it from the same batch. Okay, one more ring, then I go digging in my box. Well, I'll measure this first and then go digging in the box. That's assuming I can actually get this last ring in place. Come on. Come on, ring. You are going to go in there. I know you're fighting me. What I could do with at the moment is one of those emotes that's got something to do with rings not wanting to go where they want to go, where I want them to go. Picture a ring with an evil face on it. Right, so let's see if this is long enough as it is. It's that short, which is a little bit irritating. So what's that? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. 18 rings. I'm 18 rings short. So I've got to just bring the camera up again for a second. I've got to, it's going to be out of focus, isn't it? Okay. I've got a box with rings in the bottom of it somewhere. There we go. But I haven't got any silver ones. Got some really nice purple ones, which are probably... Where's the camera? Oh, there it is. Yeah, they're really nice lilac colour are these. Actually, the camera's not doing too bad either. They don't look blue. Yeah, that's amazing. And some slightly darker purple ones that actually look purple. Wow! I tell you what that must be, he says, trying to find the right way to move this. The reason I'm surprised, I don't know if Eddie's still around, but purple rings in the past have always looked blue, and yeah, we have a bit of fun with these blue rings are purple and what have you. I've never been able to get this camera to show purple rings as purple, and it is. And the only difference is that I'm using cool white LED lamps here in the studio, whereas before I was using a mix of warm cool LEDs and incandescent lamps. So it must be the colour temperature of the lighting. So I've just learned something, and what I've just learned is I've got no silver rings. I need to put them in boxes. I'm going to experiment now. These are the worst. Let's see what these look. Oh no, they look blue. These are the blue rings. They're not, they're purple. These are a lovely purple rings. If you are familiar with Cadbury's chocolate, the foil in Cadbury's chocolate is a purple colour. These rings are that same colour. Unfortunately, they're showing blue. Yeah, well, that's a pity, because it's a lovely rich purple, is that? Right, well, in that case, that's decided it. Oh, I wonder. Actually, I might. Given that I only need 18. Given that I only need 18, I may have enough in here. This is kind of a sample box. So let's bring the camera down a bit to where it'll start to focus again. I may have to look at that in a moment but this is a sample, sort of a sample box, but it's also a sort of small project box. I've got those purple blue rings again, but these are sort of different colours. And so it's out of focus, and those blue ones here are blue. But I've got some silver ones here, so I might have just enough to finish. So I shall just get some out. I was about to say I quite like the yellow ones here, but to be honest, I love all these colours. They're beautiful, shiny colours. So I think I wanted about 18. So 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, and I've still got some left, so that's good. You're going to alert because of the cattail. Okay, that's not a problem. I understand that as that issue. I do indeed understand that issue. Can I? Now the thing I need to just have a look, you see whether they are close enough. Yeah. See, silver, there's not a lot of difference in batch colour with silver. It's usually a fairly safe thing. Let me move that one out of the way. Actually, it's interesting. This one obviously needs a clean. This is one that I basically never take off. I have taken it off, but this one is mine, and it usually sits alongside this one, which is made out of sterling silver, and it always looks a lot shinier, as you can see. So sterling silver doesn't look very shiny; it tarnishes, whereas the aluminium doesn't. But it is looking a little bit dull, so compared with the new one, as you can see. So what I'm gonna, that's not in focus, but so what I'm gonna have to do is basically give it a wash in soapy water. Should be enough to make that sparkle again. So well, I was about to say, Eleazar, tell us about the cat, because I didn't know you had a cat. Well, I perhaps did and have forgotten again. But yeah, I mean, obviously you've got a cat on your knee, I guess, for it to be on the keyboard. But now, is that a closed ring? That's a closed ring, is it? Yep. So I'll leave that closed and not bother opening it. So 18 rings. 18 rings. I can't have 18 rings. Well, I can have 18 rings, but that means, yeah, I'm going to get another 2 out. Because of the way I'm weaving it, 18 rings is a bit is awkward to weave. Although having said which, we'll find out anyway. So I am now going to close 10 of these. Is that in focus? Hopefully that's not too bad in focus. I really could do with a remote control focus on this camera. Actually, I could really do with a close-up camera. I must do some work on that one. That's 4. So I'm going to close 10. That's 5. 6. 7. Come on. Alright. There we go. 7. Eight. 9, and one more makes 10. Okay, and now what I'll do is open these other 10 and then I'll weave them, and then hopefully we'll have a bracelet that's the right length. But I am glad I had some in there, but I'm going to have to order some more now. Probably about another 1,000 rings. Silver gets used quite a bit. It's for one thing, it's kind of like a nice substitute for silver, you know, like the sterling silver. So it looks like silver even though obviously it isn't. And over time it doesn't look like silver because silver tarnishes, but and it goes well with as a colour with others as well. I was about to say it represents white, although you can actually get white as well, but the white is a matte when you get it. Right, so let's weave these in to the pattern. And he says now, trying to remember how to do this. I've got a feeling, did I put the 2 rings on the end of there? Oh yeah, that's right, I go through there. No, I don't. I've put these down and completely forgotten what I'm doing and where I go at this point. So I'm looking at looking at the wrong end. They're not quite the same on both ends. It kind of starts and ends as opposed to some weaves are sort of identical at both ends. This isn't one of them. Close, but it's kind of a backwards version at the other end. And the reason I was having a problem working out where I should go is because I was looking at the wrong end. That ring is slightly out. There we go. One of the things you have to do, or often have to do with aluminium rings, is once the bracelet's made, to go back around and look at every single ring again, because they kind of have the aluminium kind of has a memory. And it sort of remembers where it was, and when you close a ring like I've just done, then what can happen is it can relax and go back towards the position it was in before, which opens up the gap between the 2 ends, which you don't want to happen because that's where it gets sharp, or you can get scratched. It's not sharp, you know, cut yourself, but it can feel not very nice. And also you can get things like hair trapped in the gap. So when they're closed properly and completely, it's almost impossible to feel where that is. You have to use something like a sharp object or your fingernail to actually feel where the closure is when they're closed properly. So what I do, generally speaking, is having made a bracelet, the next morning or the next day I'll go back and look at every single ring in the weave and just make sure it is still closed sufficiently or well, or is actually closed properly. Yeah, this is definitely taking a lot longer than it should have done. And unfortunately, if anybody is watching that was looking forward to the 3D printer, then I'm sorry, we're not going to be doing that tonight now. And that will, however, be on the next stream. Although I'm not 100% sure whether there'll be one during the week or whether that will be on next Saturday. What I suggest is, if you want to see that, then certainly follow me here on Twitch, but I'd also follow me on Twitter at Zaragonart, and I generally do tweet when I'm going to go live, and if I know something like for some reason, like at the weekend, I'm not going to go live on Saturday night, then I'd be tweeting. I will tweet out as soon as I know, to let you know so you don't come looking. Right, we're nearly finished, and hopefully this will be long enough to put the clasps on, and then it will be finished, apart from the quality check tomorrow. That's something I won't be streaming. It's not a fantastically interesting thing to watch, me examining every single ring. Ah, she moved. Oh, it's a female cat as well, okay. I was about to say they are the ones that tend to want to sit on knees more than often or not, but having in my household it's the male cat that wants to sit on my knee, not the female. The female's not interested at all. I shall have another look at chat in a second when I just get this ring in place. I'm probably keeping going off camera, aren't I? I'm very well, thank you, Leazar. I'm feeling a little bit warm. It's a bit warm here in the studio, but it's actually, I'll rephrase that. It's not that warm here in the studio, but it's humid. Which makes it feel that warm here in the studio, and it's a little bit uncomfortable, shall we say, especially when you're streaming. I don't know why it is, but as soon as the camera turns on, it feels warmer, and that's not because the camera's generating any more heat than it was before it was turned on, and it's not the lights, it's just the extra effort of doing this, doing activities and talking and everything else at the same time. But how are you? She wanted. Is it that cold where you are? Junior, who I believe you've seen, he isn't what I'd describe as a lap cat. I'm the only one he will tend to sit on. He's usually quite a polite cat, because he'll come and sit by you and he sort of asks. Right, so that will probably need those two rings adjusting, but let's see if that's long enough to match this one, because that's what the customer wanted, was a match to that. Yep. That is. So what I'm going to do is get a clasp. So I've got a lobster claw clasp here. These are sterling silver. You've had better days, but you're all right now. Oh, well, I'm glad you're okay now. That is the main thing. And I hope the rest of your days are alright now. Yeah, it's no good them being not very good. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use these 2 rings to fasten this on. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to open them slightly and capture the underlying rings here. So I've got to find some. But I'll just take that one off for the minute and put it back on in a moment. So somewhere on here, I can actually just see it, but it can be really hard to see the joins when they're closed as closely as this one is. I can just see it here, and I can feel it if I use the nail, but I can only just feel it. So what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to capture 4 rings with this rather than just 2. I'm going to go diagonally across and capture the 4 rings. And I'm going to slip I was going to slip this on, but this has got a split ring on it. Sorry, a ring on it that needs closing. So there we go. Split rings are different things. So I'll put that on there. Then what I'll do is I'll put the other ring through the same path. Alongside it, so I'm following the same theme basically. That needs opening a little bit more. These are quite soft enough to do that with. If the ring's large enough as these are, you can actually do it with your fingers, but the pliers are a lot easier. Okay, that's the clasp on that end. What I need to do now is put a ring on here. Well, I generally do that by putting a smaller one on first, which I happen to have in front of me, and then put a big ring, which then acts as the loop into which the lobster claw fastens. In fact, that's a small and a big ring together, so I'll take them. So I've got a bigger, thicker ring. Oh sugar, have I just damaged that? Yes I have. Okay. So I'll take that one off and I'll throw that away. The pliers slipped off there, off the ring, and in slipping it off I've actually sort of made a groove in the ring. So what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to close this ring, which is a thin one. So this is the one that will act as the ring that the lobster claw fastens into. I'm going to see if I can grab all 4 like I did a moment ago. Get 4, that's it. So by going through all 4 rings I hold these 2 in the end pattern. Strictly speaking, it's not quite in the right pattern, but because they should be a chevron sort of effect, but it sort of closes over nicely like that. Has that one moved? It has. I mentioned earlier that the aluminium sort of relaxes, and that one has very quickly just relaxed back a little bit. There we go. So there we go, fasten a finished chain, and I've got it the right way round. There we go, one finished chain. If I can work out which way to move this on camera, there we go. That's something like I think it's a 9.5 inch bracelet. If I measure this one that's on the desk, I will know. Yeah. 9¼ in this particular case. Close enough, 9.5 inch, 9¼ Can't quite work out where that's going to go. Thank you very much, Laser. This is what's called a full Persian, as is that, but that's mine. This one belongs or will belong to a customer as soon as I send it out, hopefully tomorrow. So I'll do a quality check in the morning and make sure that everything's on there. I've not missed anything. All the rings are in the right place. They look it to me now, but I've found it's often better to take a fresh look at something. I actually find this one, I mean, the usual thing about this, the full Persian, by the way, is you tend to look at it, if I bring it up to where I think it's in focus. Is it in focus? About there. If you look, it's kind of like, the rings are like a chevron, in this case pointing down. And if you rotate it 90 degrees, they point up. The thing I find fascinating about this though is if you rotate it 45 degrees and you look at it that way, it looks like almost a completely different weave. And I actually find that quite fascinating. I actually like that view of this one more than I like that the standard view, shall we say. But of course this is kind of the half Persian view. A half Persian, he sort of looks a bit like that, but anyway, what I'm going to do now though is it's 10 o'clock and it's a bit late. It's a bit late to do the 3D printer, but I will be doing that on the next stream unless somebody places another order in the meantime. But I will be doing the 3D printer on the next stream. Let's bring the camera up here and I'll just bring it into shot. I'll try and bring it into shot. That's the problem with a 3D printer. It's kind of big and it's out of focus. Go on, I'll let you autofocus. There you go. So I'll set it up better for the actual stream, but this is how we've got so far. We've got the two A-frames, we've got the base frame in place, which is sat on something, there we go, and it's square, which I'm glad to say. There's a rod, I ought to be able to move this camera by a lot easier than this. There's a rod here and there's one at the other side as well, which I'm sort of pointing at, but you can't see. It's identical on this other side. These are called the Z-axis rods, on which the Z-axis rides up and down, and they have to be perfectly vertical and exactly underneath this point on both sides, and both are going to be in exactly the same place on the bed. So that's the thing to do, is to line those up. And essentially the way that gets done is with a T-square like this, or set square. So one of these things. This one's rusty. Where's the camera? I cannot. You know what? It's the camera. I'll have to see whether the camera's reversed. I don't seem to be able to put it where I think. Oh, I know what it is. It's the delay. That's what's confusing me. This is a rusty set square. It's been out in a workshop, but the rust doesn't change the right angle. And essentially, all I'll be needing to do is to sort of align it in that direction there, and then put it this way and align it in that direction there. But we'll actually do it probably off a glass bed, which is going to sit in on here, because it's got to be at right angles to the bed, not to the table, even though the table is flat, but it's got to be to the bed. So we've got to do both of them. So that will be the next job, and then once that job's done, the next thing is to put the build platform, which is called the Y-axis, which sits and rides on these two rods here. And rides backwards and forwards. So what you have is the y-axis going this way, the z-axis on these rods going up and down, and then the carriage that rides on these takes the print head, which goes in the x direction, which is backwards and forwards. So that's what we're doing. That's what's next. So align those and the y-axis carriage. We'll probably get that done on the next stream. Let me put that to one side. And I will have to sort my desk out for that and get some more space, so let's do that. I'm going to stop it for tonight. Sorry for those of you, as I say, who would like to have seen more of that. It's a bit late to do that. I'm going to get myself a drink. I've been talking for 2.5 hours virtually non-stop, and then I'll go to bed. But hopefully next stream will be next Saturday evening, somewhere around 7 to 8 p.m. UK time, which at the moment is, what's that, 1900 to 2000, somewhere in that order. So it'll be about 18 to 1900 UTC, GMT, both the same. And we'll be able to carry on then. If I get a chance to do a stream in the middle of the week, I will tweet out that I'm doing it, hopefully with as much notice as possible. That depends on some other work that I've got to get done, which I do have to. I'm currently doing after I finish work each night, so it's quite a busy evening for me. I don't have time to stream at the moment. Hopefully I will do in the future. The sooner that comes, the better. So I'm going to say thank you everybody that's been watching. Litani, thank you very much for watching. Nice to see you. Ald. I'm afraid I'm not sure how to pronounce that. Ald-LH. I'll do that. Hello and goodbye. Sorry you've just missed out. I have been making a. I'm on that camera now, aren't I? A bracelet this evening. It took a lot longer than it should have done. I'm way out of practice of making this particular weave, and I should have been a lot faster and I'd have had time to do the printer. But about 10 o'clock. Now it's about time to stop. So sorry about that. Generally, I'll start, as I mentioned, around about 7 to 8 o'clock, just depending on when I have a meal on a weekend at the moment. So check me out here on Twitch if you want to see a little bit more of the build that's been done so far. The VOD should still be there from the Friday and from Saturday. Yesterday. Yeah, I did the printer yesterday, from yesterday. And I think the one from last weekend is probably still there as well when we did a bit more on it. And otherwise, as I mentioned, I'm on Twitter if you want to see when I go live, and follow me here, of course, on Twitch. But for the moment, thank you and good night.